There goes Grixer as well, and all of a sudden it's Kansan, but a beautiful double play, trying to ride out the final 4 seconds. He has no idea where that diffuser is. SMG up. They're watching in this position. As he goes to swing out, there's both Coded and Katsang watching from this angle. Kansan, are you a miracle worker? You only need one more!
Kansan!
And there it is! One of the best plays that we've seen at this tournament. The Sonics, in remarkable fashion, will take map number 1.
I can't believe it. I can't. That was a lost ride. Look at that. They're so happy.
Wow, what a clutch. That was probably one of the best clutches I've ever seen. Like, easily one of the best. All right, we are talking about the 6 Invitational Playoffs day number 1, and there are 8 matches to cover, so we're not slowing down any from the group stages just yet, and let's get into it. Oxygen versus FaZe. As you can see, the community prediction was heavily in favor of FaZe, and the match was also heavily in favor of FaZe. They end up taking a 2-0, a 7-3 on Bank, and a 7-3 on Clubhouse. If we take a look at the round breakdown, starts off with a round win by Oxygen, but then FaZe get 3 for themselves. Oxygen gets another round, FaZe gets another round. 4-2 defensive half on Bank for FaZe. Definitely a good place to be. Bank being such an attacker-sided map at this point, you're happy if you take at least 3 defenses. Taking any more than that, and you're really happy. FaZe then go to the second half and take the first round, going up 5-2, 1 round for Oxygen, 1 round for FaZe, putting them up 6-3 on map point, and then they secure the map 7-3 after just 10 rounds. We go to the second map of Clubhouse, and in the first round, it is a FaZe win, starting off well, just like they ended in the last map. And then Oxygen takes 2, 1 for FaZe, another 1 for FaZe, and 1 more for Oxygen. 3-3 half on Clubhouse, and then FaZe just runs away with it. They get 4 rounds in a row to close it out pretty easily. Yeah, Oxygen was looking pretty good at the beginning of the tournament, and they've just declined, and now they're at this point getting beaten not quite as badly as they beat Navi on the first day, but pretty close. They got a total of 6 rounds here, and Navi got a total of 3 rounds only in that very first match that they played. So we'll take a look at the stats here, and we'll move on. Not too much to talk about in this one, I don't think. Astro popping off. I think he's probably their highest rated player at this point in the tournament. We'll look at the stats at the end for the players. I don't think I'm going to look at the map stats today. We'll save that for another day, but we will look at the player stats. And everyone, in fact, on FaZe going positive on rating, everyone going at least even on kills, and then looking at Oxygen's side, Laxing and Foxay keeping their heads above water, and Yaga just barely not doing so. Kino and Vertical struggling in this matchup. And that'll do it for this one. Let's move on to the next match. Ninjas in Pajamas versus TSM. So the community prediction is actually pretty evenly split here, just slightly in favor of TSM. I did end up predicting TSM to take it, and well, I got it right. I guess my gut did me dirty and my heart did me right, because initially I wanted to go with Ninjas in Pajamas, and I did change my mind and go for TSM instead. So 7-1 and 7-5, just as dominant, I guess you could say, as FaZe was against Oxygen. Oxygen only got 6 rounds in their matchup, and NiP only gets 6 rounds in this matchup. All right, they play on Cafe first. TSM gets around, NiP gets around, and then TSM gets 6 rounds in a row. Close it out pretty easily. We see a nice clutch coming out from Merc here, action-packed around there. And then besides that, yeah, just pretty clean, clear, concise win for TSM. Move on to Coastline, and it's not as easy of a win, but it is a win nonetheless. We start with 3 rounds for TSM on attack, and then NiP pulls back around for themselves. 2 more for TSM, putting them up 5-1. That's not an insurmountable deficit that this puts Ninjas at. 5-1, attacking half on Coastline is doable, and obviously so, because TSM just did it. But it's not the easiest thing to come back from. You definitely want to get at least 2 rounds defending on Coastline if possible. But of course, this means NiP does not do it. TSM gets their first defensive round, and then at that point, they're on match point. NiP has to go flawless to push it to overtime, and flawless for 5 rounds it is. They managed to get 4 in a row, but they cannot get the 5th. TSM closes it out. So again, nice victory for TSM, 7-1, 7-5. I expected it to be a grittier, dirtier showdown than this, but TSM have definitely improved from their play in the last 2 days of the group stage. And taking a look at the stats here, Achieve popping off 20 and 10, and the entry overall for TSM looks pretty good, and the numbers do pretty much down the line, except for Geo struggled for whatever reason in this matchup. And then speaking of struggling, that is pretty well every player on NiP. Pino, not too much. Kamikaze and Psycho, not that bad either. But then we see Muzi and Julio with not the greatest stats. So, I mean, I don't know what the deal with NiP is. I don't know why they're so inconsistent. They go from winning SI to getting grouped at Mexico to getting second place at Sweden to dropping the losers bracket immediately here at this Six Invitational. So that, you know, they're not out. They still could make a run and they still could place well, but it's not looking too good for them at the minute. And we will move on to the next match. Base Station Gaming versus Navi. At this point, you could probably call them Nape. I think Milosh already made this joke on broadcast with Navi meaning born to win, and Nape, Nape would be Nadus Perdere, born to lose. And yeah, Navi, their play looks a lot better than it did at the very beginning of groups when they started out getting smashed by Oxygen. They slowly got better. They ended up their group stage taking that map off of Damwon to survive, to make it out of their group and to face Space Station here. The community prediction was very decisive. It made it look like this match might be a smash. And yeah, I would have believed that it would have been the least close of all of these 4 initial matches that I've covered. So the 2 before this and then the one that'll be after this. But this was an absolute nail biter. If you're a Space Station fan like me, man, it was looking very dark. Navi won Chalet pretty easily here, 7-3. So Navi get 3 in a row. Space Station answer back with 3. 3-3 is okay, and for each side. And then Navi get 3 more of their own, putting them onto match point already, up 6-3. And this is similar to the situation Space Station was in a few days ago against Cyclops, but that was 6-1 and they managed to come back. But they do not. Navi doesn't even let them get a single round, and they just secure the map 7-3. So Navi looking surprisingly good. Maybe not that surprisingly, because they did improve a lot over the groups, but yeah, just nobody thought that they were going to put up this good of a fight against Space Station. And then we go to Bank, and man, it starts off with a Space Station round, but then we see 2 from Navi, 1 from Space Station, Navi, Space Station, and that gives us a 3-3 once again. Maybe a slight win for the defenders. I think on Bank you should be getting at least 4 attacks, or else I'd say you probably lost the half by some margin. And then we go on to the other half. Navi starts attacking, and they take a round, and they take another round. You know what that means? They're up 6-3. But this time, Space Station clawed back. They get 3 in a row, and then they go to overtime, and they win 2. So 5 rounds, and they reverse the map from being down 3-6 to winning the map 8-6. And that's exactly what they had to do to not lose the series right then and there. And then we go to map 3, and actually, Bank, this is the first time I think we've seen Space Station play this. So I think Navi was probably hoping to beat them there. Space Station probably was happy enough to go there because of how easily Oxygen handled Navi on the map, but well, they didn't look especially handleable this time, even though Space Station does clutch out the win. And then we go to Clubhouse, of course, Space Station's famous map. Navi takes 2, Space Station 1, Navi take 3 more. So once again, Space Station's backed against the wall. 1 more puts Navi on match point, and 1 more secures Navi the match. So Space Station has to match it or do better, and what do? They win all of them. They win all 6 defenses to win the map and win the match without dropping around in the second half of this final map. So it was crazy, and it ended with a rampy 1v1 on Castle, no less. And yeah, this was quite the one to watch, and I was down a bit bad because this was going on at the same time as the next match I'm going to talk about, the Sonics match against Elevate, and Sonics is in a very similar situation. It looks like both of these NA teams were just going to be taken down, but man, what a comeback. So we'll take a look at the stats here, and it's actually only Rampy on Space Station that goes positive, just dragging his team across the finish line, keeping their winner bracket lives alive. Bosco's second highest rated player on his team in this matchup, along with Hot and Cold. I guess they're the same rating, and it's good to see Bosco doing a little bit better. His rating definitely suffered here. I don't know why it's this low below 1, considering, you know, just +1 here, -1 here. I guess maybe the low cost is probably what brought it down. And then Hot and Cold Sky is a little bit lower, and then Fultz kind of struggled here. And then we look at Navi, and we see another pretty tight clustering. It was, I don't recall which team it was. It might have been MIBR. It was one of the LATAM teams, had a game, maybe it was Furia. Very tight clustering, and it was between 1.03 and 0.97. And I suppose if that had happened here, they might have won this. these two players, their ratings had a little bit higher, it might have been indicative of a win. But you do like to see the tight clustering, but it was not enough to win them the match. I'm sure these guys' hearts are just absolutely broken. They're not out of the tournament yet. They get to play more in the losers bracket, at least one more match, but oh man, to lose like that is rough. And so we'll move on to the next match. Elevate versus Sonics. Elevate even got more of the community on their side for this matchup. More of the voters voted for them, but it was still pretty close here. And this is another close matchup. And well, I sort of gave it away in the last one. Something pretty similar is going to happen on that second map with Sonics making a comeback. I did vote for Sonics here, so after this matchup, I am 4 for 4 on predictions in my bracket prediction thing. I was feeling kind of on top of the world, honestly, after this one, because it was looking like I was about to be 2 for 4 rather than 4 for 4. So we'll look at how these maps went down. And yeah, at this point in the tournament, it's sort of the vibe is sort of they can't keep getting away with this because, well, okay, I'll talk about it in just a second. Let's go through the maps really quickly. So Elevate runs it up. They get the first 5 rounds on Villa here. It looks like it might be an absolute smash by Elevate onto Sonics. Sonics finally stop the bleeding and they get one of their own, and then another round even once they switch sides. But then Elevate goes on to match point here, one more for Sonics, and then Elevate once again gets another round, which closes it out 7-3. And this is basically just like what happened in the previous matchup, with Navi beating Space Station 7-3 on the first map, and then we go to the second one, Clubhouse, right? So Elevate Sonics, Elevate Sonics, Elevate Sonics 3-3 half. Nobody's gotten 2 in a row just yet. That's a crazy round. Nice 1v1. And then we see Elevate, 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 and they're on 6 points. It's 6-3. They need to take one of the next 3 rounds to secure this series without going to overtime. And you know what Sonics do? They battle it back. They get 3, and their streak is broken here. Elevate does get 1, but this is after they're no longer on map and match point because we're in overtime, and then Sonics win 2. So, man, both of these NA teams, they were both down 6-3, and they both came back 6-3. Sonics knows what it feels like to be on the other end of this. This happened to them against Empire. They were up 6-3 against Empire after being up a whole map. So again, they needed just one of those 3 rounds to close it out, and they failed to do so, and they ended up losing that series. Heartbreaker. And now it's happened to these guys, and it happened to Navi in that previous match, and it happened to Cyclops against Space Station, except even worse because that one was a 6-1, and maybe it even happened one other time that I'm not remembering. But yeah, just they cannot keep getting away with this. Teams gotta learn to close it out, or I don't know, just cut down the absolute massive clutch potential that these teams have. So a little bit of a redemption for Sonics there in that they managed to make the comeback when the comeback was made on them, just like last week or however many days ago it was. And then Oregon was the last map, and we see a couple of Sonics rounds, 3 Elevate rounds, 1 more for Sonic, 3-3 half, and then they go up 5-3 after winning these 2, 1 for Elevate, 1 for Sonics. They are on match point, and then they win it out. And let's look at these stats. What's going to happen? Yeah, you know what's going to happen. Grixer going crazy, 1.35 rating. And, I mean, some of the Sonics fans and Grixer fans will be very excited once they see the stats at the end of the day, I suppose. Grixer just keeps getting away with it as well. Just this guy's insane. He's been insane on in the NAL throughout the last year, only outperformed by Hot and Cold by not even that much, but just absolute nutty player, and he never really performed once he got onto LAN. When he played in Mexico, I think he had like around a 0.9 rating or something like that, and then in Sweden around a 1.0 rating, but he's going nuts this tournament. As you could see, nobody else on his team even went positive on kills, just a little bit positive rating here by Rexon, +4, high cost, high KPR, survival rate's fine, 2 1vx's along with 2 1vx's by Rexon as well. That's quite a lot of clutches in just one best of 3, I guess. And yeah, so that's that series, and that's it for the first round of the upper bracket. That puts 4 more teams in the losers bracket, the losers of these 4 matches, of course, and then it puts 4 more teams into the second round of the upper bracket, and those are the matches we're about to cover. So there's going to be some repeats of the teams. So let's go into that next match. FaZe Clan versus Team Liquid. I think the community prediction here illustrates how dominant Liquid have been and have looked throughout this tournament. FaZe just earlier today had a 79% community prediction in their favor against Oxygen, and now Liquid against FaZe has 83% of voters in their corner. That's actually crazy. This is a rematch of groups, so we do have something to base our prediction on that's super recent and super relevant to what we're looking at here. But man, crazy. 7-2, 7-5. This is even more dominant than Liquid's 2-0 in the groups. That was a 7-5, 7-5, so here we see them improving on that. On Clubhouse, it looked like Liquid was just clutching up on FaZe, and that FaZe had to just adjust a couple of things, and then they might end up taking the map, but that is not what happened. PSK gets this clutch here in this first round, Ness gets this 1v2 clutch here, and then Resets rather, gets a 1v2 clutch here. So FaZe won the other round, and the 3 round wins that Liquid has so far all came off the back of clutches. So maybe if FaZe gets that sorted out, they can take a bunch of rounds in the rest of the map, but no, they actually don't even get another, or they get one other round after this round that they already have. So right, they're up 3-1, Liquid is, and then they take another round, and then finally once they switch sides, FaZe Clan gets one. So at this point, Liquid's up 5-2, Liquid get another round, and then they get another round. It's too easy for these guys. It's unbelievable. And this clutch was especially nice. It was a little 1v2. Resets is playing a Rooney. He's downstairs. They're defending the bedroom bomb site, and the 2 attackers are in the site. One of them plants, and then he runs up and he kills the first guy. The other guy is then outside the windows. He disables, gets like 1 second away from finishing the disable, and then he gets off and just shoots the dude who got to the window like right then, or vaulted or whatever he did. He just knew exactly when he was going to get there. This guy looking robotic in nature, as does Liquid as a whole. Wow, I don't even know what to say. These guys look nigh unstoppable. And so we'll have to see how the rest of their bracket run goes. And then we'll look at Oregon, I guess. Closer map here. Liquid gets 3 in a row. FaZe gets 1. Liquid gets 1. FaZe gets 1. So Liquid at this point is up 4-2 after their attacking half. They go into defense and they get another round, going up 5-2. FaZe Clan gets a couple, and it's getting kind of close. Liquid gets one going into match point. FaZe get another round, and then they need to get the following round as well to go into overtime, but they failed to do so. Ask getting a 1v1 clutch of his own. And yeah, 2-0 for Liquid, and they continue to look just as good as, if not better, than they did in the group stage. Looking at the stats here, everyone on Liquid got a 1vx clutch except for Palu, so he ended up doing pretty well. I think he kind of struggled on the first map, but he made up for it in the second map. I think, if I remember right, or at least struggled as far as Palu standards. So Palu and Nesk not on top of the board. This time it's Ask and PSK, so it is nice to see the members of Team Liquid sharing the load. Ask especially popping off the Thermite Smoke main, going 5-1 on entry, going +10 on KD, 1.10 KPR. Yeah, this is just nuts. And then the members of FaZe not faring too well. They did only get 7 rounds to the 14 rounds won by Team Liquid. So, very low survival rates, KPRs, all this stuff. And yeah, it makes sense having poor stats after a poor performance, but what are you going to do when you're going up against this team? Going up against a team this good. And yeah, well, I guess we'll move on to the next match. TSM versus Furia. These two just played in the group stage just a handful of days ago. TSM did take that one 2-0. They were pretty close maps if I remember right, but still a 2-0. And this makes sense when we see the community prediction here. They got over 3/4 of the voters, and I suppose that's partially based on the fact that they just beat Furia, and also partially based on the fact that TSM is just a really popular org with popular players, and one in particular, you know who it is. And we'll look at the maps here. It was a close series, but not especially close maps. A max regulation Chalet, but then a 7-2 and a 7-3 on Cafe and Oregon are not really close at all. So Furia takes the first round off the back of a highest clutch, and then we see TSM get 2, Furia get another, TSM get 2 more, 4-2. Attacking half for TSM on Chalet is solid, and then they switch sides. TSM takes another round and another round. They're already up on match point, and we've seen that so much on Chalet where one team gets on to match point pretty early after round 8, 9, 10, whatever. TSM does it after round 8. Furia need to win 4 in a row to stay alive. They do manage to get 3, but not 4. TSM closes that out 7-5. And then when we go to Cafe, Furia, TSM, and then Furia. So a little 3-win streak by Furia, 2 by TSM, and then 4 more by Furia. So pretty decisive. Maybe the tides are shifting to favor Furia at this point in the match. They had a much more decisive map here than Chalet for TSM, and then when we go into the third map, it didn't matter because decisive victory for TSM. Furia takes 1, TSM takes 2, 1 for Furia, 2 for TSM, 4-2 defensive half on Oregon, pretty standard, and then 1 more for Furia, putting them on 3-4, but then TSM, closing it out 7-3. And solid win for TSM. They definitely looked better than they did at the end of the group stage, I suppose, as I said already in the matchup versus Navi, but they have just slain two of the LATAM teams, and now they go up against Liquid, and that's, I believe, not tomorrow, but the next day, I think. And so, yeah, I don't know. Can they just keep beating LATAM teams? Is LATAM able to defeat TSM? We'll find out eventually. Okay, looking at the stats here, Fantasy on top once again, and his teammates not terribly far behind average ratings, but not enough to get it done. Merc popping off here, and Bolo as well, with Chala, Geo, and Achieved lacking a bit, but yeah, Merc and Bolo definitely made up for it. So we see a 77% cost for Merc, 1.06 KPR, pretty low survival rate though, but you know, if you get a bunch of kills before you die, it's sort of whatever. Bunch of plates coming out from TSM, 6 of them, and only 1 by Furia. And right, let's move on to the next match. Base Station Gaming versus Team Empire. Coming into this match, I was 6 for 6 on predictions, and I was feeling so hot. But then I had to get my heart broken here. Team Empire took about 60% of the votes. And yeah, maybe I was a bit hopeful voting for Space Station, but I still think it was reasonable to think that they might have won. These two teams met in the quarterfinals of the Mexico Major, which Empire ended up winning, and they actually played the same maps there as they did here, but this ends up being even a little bit more decisive result than back in Mexico. But the most recent meeting these two teams had was in the groups of Sweden, which they played on Villa twice, and Space Station took both of those. I think they were pretty close, but still. So Space Station maybe had a slight edge over them in the most recent meeting. It's possible that maybe they shouldn't have actually won those maps. One of them had 2 back-to-back clutches, and 2 of the most insane clutches I've ever seen. And I mean, throw them right up there along with the clutch that I had at the beginning of this video. If you haven't ever seen those, go back and watch them. It's Space Station versus Empire on Villa at the Sweden Major. I don't remember if it was the first or second time that they played each other. I think it was the first. Anyways, looking at these, 7-5 for Clubhouse, 7-4 for Cafe. When they played in Mexico, it was Cafe first and then Clubhouse. It was a 7-4 on Cafe as well for Empire, but it went, I think, all 15 rounds for Clubhouse. Okay, so taking a look at the round count, Space Station gets 2, 1 for Empire, 1 for Space Station, 1 for Empire, and 1 more for Space Station. They're up 4-2, I think, after their defensive half, and we see a very action-packed round here. 1v3, 4K disable by Fultz in this round. Space Station looking pretty good after the first half of the first map, but then we see Empire even it up. They get 2 rounds of their own. It's 4-4, and then they get another one. They take the lead. Space Station evens it up once again. It's at 5-5, but Empire gets 2 in a row to stop Space Station from winning or even taking it to overtime. There's a lot of stuff going on in these rounds, right? We see disable, multi-kills, all this stuff, and this one in particular, a bunch of multi-kills. And yeah, some of these rounds, it really looked like Space Station shouldn't have lost, but after this map, it did also seem like maybe they were just going to continue this trend of being really slow starters. They already had their start to the day, though. This was their second match of the day. They just played Navi earlier. And after that game, they interviewed Rampy, and he really talked about their slow starts. And, well, he didn't even have to talk about it. It had been evident at that point after that match and even some of their matches that they played in the group stage that, yeah, for some reason they've got off to a really slow start, but they've been mega clutch. So maybe they can close it out in the next 2 maps. But, of course, you know that they don't. Team Empire gets 5 rounds in a row, and at this point, it's almost too much to bear, and it just seems like, I don't know, maybe they're destined to just clutch and win every time, and their backs are against the wall. But this is not the first time this tournament that their backs have been against the wall. They only have 2 more rounds before Empire takes the map, so that is Space Station only has 1 more round to drop. Hot and Cold gets a big 4K here and makes sure that Empire doesn't take a 6-0 half, and then Space Station takes a round and another round, and it looks like they're mounting this comeback. They're 5-3. That is, Space Station is down 3-5, I should say. Empire gets 1 more, so at this point, they have to do it again. They have to win 3 rounds in a row, just like they did against Navi, or else they are knocked down to that loser's bracket. and they win one. They just need 2 more, but then just a pretty clean round by Empire comes out. And Space Station's hopes of continuing in the upper bracket are dashed. Oh, it was sad to see. And there goes my perfect bracket, which I didn't actually expect it to be perfect, but I was hopeful that I could get a flawless first day. It did seem quite possible. Right, okay, looking at the stats, Dan popping off, Always and Shepard as well. Always and Shepard, despite being the 2 players that have been playing in isolation, have done really well overall. It's usually 1 or 2 of the 3 players that are actually in the playing area that aren't doing as well, and it's not like these guys did bad or anything, but yeah, noticeably more yellow coloration here versus the green of these 3. And then Hot and Cold did pretty well. Fultz did well as well, but Rampy doing pretty poorly. And this is coming off the back of being the by far best player in Space Station's first series, so that one's got to sting a little bit. And yeah, just Empire's really good, and for some reason they just look almost unstoppable. Not as unstoppable as Liquid has, but Empire's looking pretty good. I mean, they might keep this run going. We'll have to see. And all right, we have one more game to talk about before we take a look at the bracket and take a look at the stats. So let's move on to that. Sonics versus Damwon Gaming Kia. This was the biggest shock of the day. Nobody thought Sonics was going to win. Well, I guess 10% of people thought that Sonics were going to win. I was rooting for them, of course. I did predict against them, though, as most people did. So that gives me 6 out of 8 predictions correct on the day, which is good. But I think I missed this one, which I'm actually happy to miss, and I missed the Space Station one, which is one of the ones I definitely didn't want to get wrong. Unfortunate, but yeah, Sonics up against 1 out of 10 odds. They managed to take it, and that's not actually what the odds are. That's just the odds the community voters here gave us. 7-5, 7-5. Didn't let it go to overtime, and you saw the clutch, of course, at the beginning of this video. That came in the final round of Bank, and again, man, what a clutch. Definitely the best clutch of this tournament so far. Best clutch I've seen probably since those Space Station clutches in Sweden. And all right, let's take a look at how the maps went down. Damwon Kia gets off to an early lead 2-0. Sonics get 1, Damwon another one, and then Sonics 2 to make it a 3-3 first half. And you know, pretty solid for Damwon. You're happy to get 3 defenses on Bank. And then we go to the other side. Sonics start out with a round win. Damwon gets 1 back. Sonics get another one. Damwon gets 1 back. 5-5. Sonics, and this is the fateful round. Man, I don't know, just the one guy must have known where he was after Kansan got those first 2 kills. I guess the guy could have sprayed the wall. The guy that was, I think, in the best position to spray the wall was the one with the diffusers, so he just tried to get it down. Maybe they could have played it a little bit differently, but you can't take anything away from Kansan. He just hit his shots. He clutched against 4 people with one of the toughest guns in the game to do so. That, you know, the thing only has 17 bullets in it. It's a good gun, but it's not very good when you're going up against multiple opponents. And man, Kansan is just looking like one of the absolute clutch gods of this tournament. And we'll see how many clutches he actually has when we look at the stats. And then looking at the match stats here, Kansan, it looks like got just the 1, along with Grixer getting 1. And then 4 plants coming out from Super, 1 for Yeti, 1 for Grixer. And it looks like, yeah, 6 plants apiece. 6 plants per team. Grixer going nuts here. So he did well in the match before. He's been doing well in pretty much every match, but this is on a whole nother level. I don't know if this is his best performance yet, which if I'm not even sure if this is his best performance, that really speaks to how good he has been performing at this tournament. 30-13, 6-1 on entry, 88% cost, 1.25 KPR, survived almost half the rounds. It's almost unbelievable. Kansan, of course, popping off as well. That clutch being absolutely massive. Things could have gone very differently in this series if that map had been allowed to go to overtime. Moving on to Damwon, it's all sub 1.0. Everyone went even or worse. And then we actually see nobody even going positive on entry. So Sonics were quite excellent on entry. Yeti going -1, everyone else going positive. And then the best anyone did on entry here is +0. Pretty high cost coming out from Yas, and he topped his team. So as I thought, he seems sort of activated, but as it seemed as when he ended the group stage, but not enough so to contest Grixer and the rest of the Sonics. And wow, what a game. I'm definitely rooting for Sonics all the way now. I'd love to see them win this thing, but we'll have to see if they can do it. They have to play against Empire in their next game, which is a rematch from the group stage, and then if they win that, they have to play against Liquid or TSM, and then if they win that, they're in the grand final, right? So even if they lose one of those, they'll still have their loser bracket life, and so we'll see how things go with that. Okay, here we have the bracket. It's getting cut off a little bit over here, but you know, there's no information over there. It doesn't really matter. Right, these were the games that we saw initially, and then we also saw these 4. So phase 2-0 over Oxygen, and so on and so forth. We already talked about all of this. The games that are set up based on these are some of these down here, of course, but the upper bracket games will continue with Liquid versus TSM and Empire versus Sonics. I believe that's not, it's not tomorrow, but it is the day after. So we need to see a bunch of losers bracket games before we see the upper bracket continue. So the games we're going to see is Oxygen versus Eminem, NiP versus MIBR, Navi versus Dark Zero, Elevate versus Rogue, and then we'll also see Damwon versus the winner of this, Space Station versus the winner of this, Furia versus the winner of this, and FaZe versus the winner of this. So that means that we will see 8 teams eliminated tomorrow. So we didn't see anyone eliminated today. We only saw upper bracket matches, but tomorrow seeing 8 loser bracket matches will eliminate 8 teams for the tournament. So we already saw 4 go after the group stages, and now we're going to see 8 more go, leaving us with just 8 teams left. We'll see who the top 8 are after tomorrow. And I mean, I guess I'll briefly make predictions here, and I'll stick with the predictions I made in my original bracket if that's actually the matchup that's happening. So Eminem versus Oxygen, I predicted Oxygen here. This is the matchup that I thought would happen, so I'm going to stick with an Oxygen win there. NiP versus MIBR, I also thought this was what's going to happen, and I did pick NIP. I have maybe a little bit less faith in them because I thought that their match against TSM would be closer than it actually was, but I'm still going to go with NIP, I suppose. And then Navi versus Dark Zero, also predicted this one. And I mean, I suppose actually I predicted on all 4 of these already. So Navi versus Dark Zero, I have Dark Zero winning this, but I'm much less confident on that now considering how close Navi got it against Space Station. It might have hurt their mental. It might have got Dark Zero enough VOD on Navi to be able to beat them now. I don't know, but I guess I'll still stick with Dark Zero, even though it's much harder to call now than I thought it was before. And Elevate versus Rogue, I'm still happy with my prediction here. I went with Elevate, so we're going to stick with that. Elevate looked quite excellent versus the Sonics. I guess they choked, but it was quite a matchup. And Rogue didn't show anything in the group stage that makes me think that they can compete with what I've seen from Elevate. I wouldn't be super surprised if Rogue do win, but I'd be some amount surprised. And then, I mean, if the teams that win here win, like if it is Oxygen, NiP, Navi, and Elevate, I'll assume they are fighting against these teams. So Damwon versus Oxygen, I'm gonna go with Damwon. They've still looked pretty good, and now they might have bled a little bit in the group stage when they lost a map to Navi, but they are losing blood quite quickly now after getting 2-0'd by the Sonics. But still, Oxygen did get kind of blown away and had a pretty questionable group stage. So I'll give the win to Damwon over Oxygen there. And then it'd be Space Station versus Ninjas and Pajamas. So this is, of course, a rematch from the Grand Finals of Six Invitational 2020. It is also a rematch of the quarterfinals of Sweden, right? And, of course, Space Station won the first one. They ended up being the world champions there. And the most recent one, NiP, did beat them. I think I'll go Space Station here. And, I mean, even bias aside, NiP didn't really show us much against TSM to make them look like a force to be reckoned with. And Space Station, even though they've had their issues, they've still looked fairly solid. Just Empire certainly better. So I'll go Space Station over NiP. And then Furia, Dark Zero, I already predicted on this one. I said Furia, which is the same result as we saw in groups, and then also the same result as we saw in bracket last time that they played at the last Six Invitational. That is so, right? Furia over Dark Zero. And then finally FaZe Clan versus Elevate, and I went with FaZe on that one. This could go the other way. FaZe Clan was very dominant against Oxygen, and they got kind of popped by Liquid, but that seems to be fitting with the hierarchy that has been established by the power level shown by each of these teams. And Elevate looked good, but they didn't get past their first round opponent. So I don't know. That one's kind of tough to call, but again, I did already call it, so I will go with FaZe over Elevate. So at this point, that would set up for Damwon versus SSG and Furia versus FaZe. And I mean, I don't need to talk about this much more. We'll get to that when and if we actually get to it. But I did predict Empire versus Sonics in this round, I think. I thought that they were both going to fall down and then they'd end up playing each other here. I picked Sonics over Empire, so I mean, I'll talk about this. Well, no, I'll talk about it now. Maybe I'll talk about it again a little bit tomorrow. I picked Sonics over Empire when I thought they were going to meet here. I'm going to still pick them now. They looked quite good against Damwon. Each of these teams took a 2-0, but Damwon had looked, I think, better than Space Station. and Sonic's already played Empire, and they already lost Empire, but it seemed like they should have won, and that was one of those sort of comeback games for Empire comeback matches. So I'm picking Sonics this time, and then I did pick Liquid over TSM, but I do think that TSM looked better than I expected them to, so this might be closer, but Liquid still does not look beatable, but maybe TSM will be the first team to prove that they are. All right, so I'm rocking with that. And then everything after that is massively speculative, so we're not going to go into it. And finally, let's look at those player stats. All right, starting off with the player stats leaderboards, we have Grixer taking the top rating, surpassing Nesk, and then KD also surpassing Nesk. It's fairly close in rating, and it's not even close in KD. At this point, though, Grixer's played like 3 more maps than Nesk, but if we look at KPR, Grixer's still like way above Nesk, so and we'll look at the full stats in a minute. In terms of entry, Grixer's up here, but he hasn't caught up to Merc and Nesk just yet, and Grixer is back on cost. I think after the end of the group stage, he had fallen off of cost, and he's back on here now. So if he continues this climb, maybe he'll end up topping all 4 of these, just like Nesk had at the end of the group stage. And then other than Grixer, we have still Nesk and Palu remaining very highly rated, and NJR and Merc as well. I think Merc climbed his way up here. He was pretty high, but I don't think he was on the leaderboards for at least rating. Maybe he was on here for KD or entry before, but number 1 was Nesk here before, and Merc has now caught up, tied Nesk, I suppose. It's just by a matter of some sort of tiebreaker that Merc is above Nesk. And right, Nesk and Palu, Merc, NJR. These are just the same players that are on top of KD and rating. And that sort of goes to show you how CCG values things. And, well, it's the nature of how you have to do it, because the other things that you might value aren't things that you can actually track as an observer. So, right, Pambazoo, quite good on entry as well, and Alamau. Alamau's at this point now out of this tournament. Everyone else here is still in. And then Cost, we see always way up here, and Reduct, sort of surprisingly, up here as well. Clutches, Woogieman is still on top of the tournament, and Prano is up here as well. Kanzan is now tied, Prano, and Grixer's not far behind, just 1 fewer, and we see NJR as well. Skies is on top of Plains. I think he was before, and now we see Super come back up to 2nd place. He was at like 4th or something. Just 3 behind Skies now, and Geo, Ask, and Coded a little ways behind. So we'll look at the full stats as well. Looking at Grixer's KPR, yeah, 1.10 versus Nesk's 0.97, so he's definitely above them. Nesk has still almost a 50% survival rate. That's pretty nuts. And yeah, 3 more maps than Nesk, I suppose. So entry plus 15, and Nesk has plus 18, just the same number of kills, but a fewer number of deaths. So more impressive on Nesk, just the same number of kills in fewer number of maps, better differential. So he's been better on entry than Grixer, I guess, just not better overall in terms of kills and clutches and everything. What else do we have to look at here? Just everything's going to look pretty green, pretty standout. Alamau is going to end the tournament still pretty high. He will end on exactly 100 kills. Grixer is approaching 200 kills already. He's almost certainly going to hit it unless he just gets absolutely shut down going forward. They still have at least, 2 matches to play. Even if they lose their next one, they have another one to play after that. And what else is notable? I guess not anything else that needs to be addressed. I could just talk about everything forever, but it would take a very long time. This is already going to be quite a long video, so I'll just scroll through this in case you want to pause it and glance at it or whatever. I'm going to look at the bottom, and then I'm going to sort it by teams really quick, and we'll maybe glance at who the top players are for their teams. Okay, and we should be at the bottom. Here we go. Yeah, Nova and Harper will probably end the tournament as lowest rated. Rips, after his game tomorrow, maybe he could claim that spot, but these 2 players are out, these 2 players are out, this player's out, these 2 are out, this one's out, so Neo and Rips might be battling it out for lowest rating, but Neo is a good way above Rips, so it seems unlikely. Right, let's look at, and I'm not going to look at the map stats today. It's just, it can't have changed that much from yesterday, although it can have changed, right? There were 8 best of 3s, but I don't think I need to look at it every day. We'll group it by teams, and then we'll take a look at this and call it a day. Right, for Rogue, and these guys are still in, Aces is their best performing player, and it makes sense. Prano not far behind. This guy's really revolutionized this roster, it seems like, and he's done in a lot of good. NJR, by far, Dark Zero's best player in this tournament. He's really been showing out. I think he might just be the best player on that team. It's entirely possible, but this is a pretty stacked team. Pambazoo is one of my favorite players to watch. I don't know. There's just something so jaunty and jovial about his movement and whatnot. Space Station, we see Rampy on top. This probably was somebody else before, or maybe not, because he actually had one really bad game and one really good day. So maybe he was on top before, I don't recall. Bosco's still struggling a bit, but I think he's brought up his rating from what it was at one point in the group stage. Pino on top for Nip by a decent margin. Nesk and Palu just continue to be the GOATs, but Ask and Resets and PSK are holding it down pretty well as well. Not getting negative ratings, KD or anything. Just a negative entry on PSK. Not a huge deal though. Sandbox is out. Oxygen is still in, and they might just be out after tomorrow. We'll have to see how they fare against Eminem. Laxing on top, and he's generally the most consistent player for this roster. Vertical is someone they really need to pop off if they want to go any deeper in this tournament. He did really, really well in stage 3 of the NAL, and he's been suffering at this tournament, so he's going to have to turn around his performance if he wants his team to stay alive in the tournament. Merc on top here, and this is crazy to see. Assuming that that Merc is still the IGL for the team, that they haven't switched since Merc said that he took over, and he's putting up these numbers as the IGL. That's crazy. Good for him. And if not, well, then I mean it's still good for him. Chala and Geo just lagging a little bit behind the stats, but they are pretty well the two dedicated support players for the team, so it is what you'd expect. And also, as I expected, yeah, Astro's on top, but not by even as much as I thought he might be. I thought it might be a little bit wider of a gap, but everyone on FaZe doing fairly well. And then Always up here pretty high. Joystick, I'm surprised he's even this high. I guess not that surprised because he had that insane game at the end of the group stage, but I think besides that one, it's generally been like Dan and Shepard a little bit higher than him. But I mean, the rating, the average is pretty high. He's about to hit 100 kills, just like a ton of players are. These guys are out. Black Ray didn't get to quite hit 100 kills. Woogie Man remains on top of his team, but Yas is climbing up. He is now the second highest rated player, and we'll see what happens with these guys. Pretty good ratings across the board, but you'd expect it considering that they're like 8 and 3 in terms of maps over the tournament. And then we see Grixer once again, yeah, just 19 kills away from 200. And then Furia, really tightly packed across the board. This is, again, I think the team that had that one game that it was all really, really tightly clustered, and you do like to see it for games and for overall as well. And then Doki has been doing pretty well this tournament, but I guess he's also had some games that he did not do pretty well in, and so his stats have averaged out to being a little bit of above average, but not insane. And then MIBR, you see some pretty good stats, and Elevate, pretty tightly clustered as well. You do like to see it. And then Bride was going pretty nuts for his team despite their handicaps. Bios did end up on the bottom of the team. Ranchero barely passed him, but at one point it was unclear if that was actually going to happen. 6 players here because they were playing with a coach as a sub for the first 2 games, and then Rafal came back in for the other 2. Then Eminem, and nothing too standoutish here. And then Team 1, and they're also out of the tournament, so this is how their stats will end. And yeah, so that should do it. I hope this video didn't end up being insanely long. It's probably like 40 minutes or something like that, but okay. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave me a like. Be sure to leave me a nice comment because I do love reading them. I really do, guys. And yeah, I guess with all of that being said, coverage should continue tomorrow. I'll catch you guys in that next video.
Anything you want to say to the fans before I let you get back to your team?
No.
All right.